Noelle Baptiste pushed a rusted stroller with one hand and nudged open a crooked gate with her hip. Her other hand clutched a thin grocery bag, half rice, half formula. The wheels of the stroller jerked over the cracks in the concrete like they were dodging landmines. Inside the stroller, her 3 daughters slept, perfectly in sync. Lonnie's tiny hand curled beneath her chin. Neva had her fingers wrapped around the corner of the blanket. Star, ever the rebel, even at 6 months, sucked her thumb with furrowed brows like she was dreaming of protest. They didn't know what was coming. Didn't know their mother once wore silk gowns and diamond anklets. Didn't know she used to be kissed under golden chandeliers by a man who said the word forever like he meant it. They didn't know she had once been Noelle Ashford, a name that opened doors, a name she now avoided saying aloud. She reached the apartment door, jiggled the lock, and forced it open. The air inside was thick and stagnant. The swamp cooler rattled overhead like it was dying 1 degree at a time. She slipped off her sandals, bent down, and gently lifted each of the girls from the stroller. One by one, she kissed their foreheads. "Mommy's got you," she whispered. "Mommy's gonna make it work. I swear it." It hadn't always been like this. 2 years ago, Noelle was riding in private jets, drinking wine that had its own security. Her photos were splashed on magazine covers, not because she chased fame, but because she had married it. Damon Ashford, CEO of Helix Holdings, Atlanta's most whispered about billionaire, sharp as a knife in business, colder than steel in courtrooms, and the man she once trusted with every inch of her heart. Now, she was 2 missed payments away from the street. And he had no idea he'd left more than a broken heart behind. She dropped the grocery bag on the chip counter, wiped the sweat from her brow, and walked back to the couch. It sagged like it had given up, just like her. She sat, pulled out a crumpled envelope from the coffee table, eviction notice. The orange paper glared at her like a slap. Due in 10 days. Where was she supposed to go with 3 babies? Her chest tightened. Her eyes stung. She didn't cry. She never cried anymore. Not since Damon had left. A year ago, they'd sat in a luxury hotel suite across from each other, cold air conditioning humming louder than their silence. Divorce papers were already signed. Lawyers had kept it cordial, efficient, final. And yet, the night before, when the papers hadn't yet been inked, he had come to her room. Neither of them spoke. They didn't need to. Clothes hit the floor. Fingers tangled. Mouths claimed. It wasn't tender. It was desperate. Like he was trying to memorize her. Like she was trying to forget him. That night, something else was signed. Something no lawyer knew about. 3 lives began in her womb. And she hadn't said a word. Not out of revenge. Not even out of shame. Because she knew Damon. He'd show up with solutions. With cash. With conditions. He'd write a check big enough to wipe out her freedom and claim their daughters like they were another acquisition. She didn't want a transaction. She wanted a father, a partner, a man who showed up with his heart, not his wallet. So, she kept the truth to herself. Until now. Now, the girls were sick again. Medicaid only covered so much. Formula was expensive. Rent even more so. And the dream she clung to, of raising them with grace, of giving them a better future, was fading with every overdue notice. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at it. A message from her boss at the diner. "Can you cover the night shift? Janine just quit." No childcare, no backup, no choice. She texted back one word, "Yes." From the other room, one of the triplets stirred, then another, then the third. She rose, tired bones cracking like cheap plastic. Her hands were trembling from exhaustion as she prepared their bottles. "Shh, baby." "Mama's right here," she cooed, though her voice was barely a whisper. And as they fed, their tiny hands touching her chest, her face, her collarbone, she wondered what Damon would say if he ever saw them. Would he recognize them? Would he even care? Or would he pretend they weren't his, like he'd pretended she didn't matter that morning he walked out, tie undone, eyes hollow? She hadn't asked him to stay for his money. She had asked him to stay because she was afraid of raising a family alone, afraid of loving a man who only knew how to run when things got real, and he'd proven her worst fear true. But now, she wasn't afraid anymore. She was angry, tired, worn down to her marrow, and maybe, just maybe, it was time he knew what he left behind. "Hey family, I had to cut this story down so we could get straight to the point. No fluff, no dragging. But before we dive in, please do me one favor, hit that like button. It helps push this story out to more amazing viewers like you. Comment below what part of the video hits you the most. And if you're new here, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button below because this story is going to be your best. And now, let's continue. Night fell like a curtain drawn too early. Inside the apartment, the heat still clung to the walls. Noelle sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by 3 baby bouncers, her daughters cooing and kicking like miniature miracles, blissfully unaware of the chaos outside their world. A small oscillating fan buzzed in the corner, doing its best to push the air around. The light overhead flickered once, then stabilized. She ignored it. Her gaze was fixed on the picture frame she always kept hidden in the drawer, a photo taken 2 years ago in Italy. Amalfi Coast. Damon stood behind her, arms wrapped around her waist, his cheek resting on her temple. They had just gotten married. It had rained that night, soft and warm, and he'd whispered in her ear, "You make everything else fade away." She remembered how his voice sounded when he said it, like truth. Now, it felt like a lie, or worse, a memory begging to be rewritten. She tucked the photo back into the drawer and pushed it shut. She didn't have friends anymore, not the kind you could call at 11 p.m. and cry to. The modeling world had no room for women who weren't size 0 or endlessly available. After she got married, her friends had started calling less. Once she moved back to the east side, they stopped calling altogether. What would they say now if they saw her? No makeup, milk-stained tank top, a mattress on the floor, a broken heart tucked beneath a tired smile. Would they pity her? She didn't want pity. She wanted peace. One of the babies let out a soft whimper. Star, of course, the loudest of the 3, already showing signs of a feisty spirit. Noelle scooped her up, bouncing her gently. "What is it, Mama's girl?" she murmured. Star's eyes blinked open, deep gray, unmistakable. The same eyes Damon had. All 3 girls had them. That was the part that scared her the most. If he ever saw them, he would know instantly. They were copies of him, each of them like a verse of poetry she hadn't meant to write but loved anyway. How would he react? Would he hate her for hiding the truth? Would he take them from her? Her chest clenched at the thought. She remembered the moment she realized she was pregnant. 2 weeks after the divorce was finalized, she had gone to the clinic thinking it was just stress. Maybe she hadn't eaten enough. Maybe she was depressed. But when the doctor came back into the room with wide eyes and said, 3 heartbeats, she nearly fell off the exam table. Triplets. Not 1. Not 2. 3. She had laughed. Then cried. Then threw up. She spent the rest of that day walking around downtown Atlanta, dazed. At one point, she sat on a park bench and whispered to the sky, "You've got to be kidding me." Telling Damon hadn't even crossed her mind at first. How could she? He had been so clear. "I don't do family, not anymore." His voice had been hollow when he said it. Not cruel, but final. He had never forgiven himself for what happened to his twin brother, Ethan. That corporate deal gone wrong. The threats, the ambush, the guilt. After Ethan's funeral, Damon had changed. He became a ghost in a custom-tailored suit. She couldn't reach him, no matter how many nights she stayed awake trying. When he walked out, he said, "You deserve better." But what he really meant was, "I can't be your husband anymore, or anyone's father." So she didn't call, didn't chase him, didn't even add his name to the birth certificates. Instead, she got a second-hand crib, learned a coupon like a champion, and hustled her way into a night job serving tables at a rundown diner 3 blocks away. And every night, when she came home smelling like grease and cheap bourbon, she looked at her babies and whispered, "You're worth it." But lately, even that mantra wasn't enough. Her strength was slipping. Her pride was bruised. And her girls were growing up fast, too fast. They deserved more than this. More than lukewarm bottles and creaky strollers and gas station diapers. They deserved a man who'd fight for them, not one who'd fled. She sat back down on the floor and reached for her notebook. Not for journaling. She didn't do that anymore. She used the pages to budget, obsessively. Every dollar was accounted for. Every cent had a purpose. She flipped to a fresh page and wrote, "Plan B, tell him?" The words looked foreign on the paper, like someone else had written them. She stared at them for a long time. Would telling him fix anything, or just open a wound that never healed right? She didn't know, but she was running out of options. From the playpen, Neva giggled, a bubbly, tiny burst of joy. It was the kind of laugh that made your soul ache in the best way. Noelle smiled. Then she heard it. A knock, not at her door, at the downstairs entrance. Footsteps, heavy ones, climbing the stairs, then silence. Then a knock at her door. She stood slowly, her heart in her throat. Clutching Star tighter to her chest, she stepped toward the peephole and looked through. Nothing, just the shadow of someone standing close. Another knock, a voice, deep, familiar, and wrapped in years of memory. Noelle. She froze. Her knees buckled. That voice. She would have known it in a crowd of thousands. It couldn't be. She opened the door, slowly. And there he was. The air in the apartment was thick with silence. Noelle stood frozen, her hands still on the doorknob. In front of her stood Damon Ashford, tall, immaculate, and very much real. The man who once swore he couldn't be a father, now standing at her door. Her breath hitched. He looked just as she remembered, clean-shaven, suit pressed, expression unreadable. But his eyes, they weren't cold, they were searching. "I didn't know where else to go," he said, his voice low. She didn't respond. She couldn't. Her mouth was dry, her heart a drumbeat in her ears. The baby stirred in her arms, breaking the tension. Damon's eyes dropped to the child, then behind her, to the two others squirming in their bouncers. All identical, all with his eyes. His jaw slackened. Are they? He began, but the words failed him. Noelle stepped aside without answering. He walked in slowly, as though afraid the room would swallow him whole. The silence between them throbbed. She placed Star gently in her seat and turned back toward him. "They're yours," she said flatly. He took a breath, held it, let it out like it burned. "Triplets," she nodded. He looked at them again, then back at her. "Why didn't you tell me?" Her shoulders lifted in a tired shrug. "You said you didn't want a family. I believed you." He flinched. "I didn't mean—" "You did," she cut in. "And I didn't have the energy to beg you to stay." A beat passed. Then another. "I need to sit down," he muttered, lowering himself onto the sagging couch. It groaned under his weight. He stared at his knees like he couldn't trust himself to look up. Noelle stood across from him, arms crossed. The fan hummed in the corner. The girls gurgled. A bottle toppled from a blanket and rolled onto the floor. Life continued, even in moments that fractured everything. She finally broke the silence. "You're not here because you missed me." He looked up. "I did." She raised a brow. "I thought about you every day," he admitted. "Every hour. But I figured you'd moved on. I figured I'd ruined everything." "You did." He stood up. "Then, let me fix it." Her laugh was short and bitter. "With what? Your bank account? A private jet and a golden stroller?" "Noelle." "I'm drowning here, Damon," she snapped. "Do you even know what it's like to choose between medicine and formula? To skip meals so your babies can eat?" He didn't answer. She took a shaky breath. "You left, and I survived. I didn't want your guilt, I wanted you." He took a step closer, then stopped himself. "I'm not here with guilt," he said carefully. "I'm here because I want to know them, and if you'll let me help." She narrowed her eyes. "Help how?" "I've already made some calls. There's a place, clean, safe, not far from here. I can pay your rent for the year. I'll set up medical care for the girls." She scoffed. "So I'm supposed to just accept that? After everything?" "No," he said gently. "You're supposed to say what you need, and I'll do it." She turned away, chewing on the inside of her cheek. Her eyes burned. Her hands shook. The pressure of a year collapsed behind her ribs. And then one of the girls, Lonnie, started to cry. Noelle moved toward her automatically, lifting her from the bouncer, shushing softly. Damon watched. There was reverence in his eyes. And something else, shame. After a moment, he spoke again. "Let me give them what I never had." She paused. He continued, "You knew my childhood. You know what it did to me, what I've been afraid of becoming. But this," he gestured to the babies, "they're not a curse, Noelle. They're the first thing in my life that's real." She rocked Lonnie gently. He added, "Just let me try." She turned to him, her face unreadable. "You can cover rent. You can buy diapers. But don't think for one second that it makes you their father. That takes time. That takes being here when the fever spikes at midnight, or when Neva won't stop crying no matter what you try." "I'll be here," he promised. Whatever it takes. She nodded slowly, a battle still waging in her chest. Then start by holding her, she said, stepping forward and handing him Lonnie. His arms froze at first, unsure. Then he wrapped them around the tiny bundle and held her close. Lonnie blinked up at him, then yawned. His throat worked, swallowing emotion. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "For all of it." Noelle didn't say anything. She walked to the sink, started rinsing out a bottle. He stood behind her, still holding the child. "I'll have the driver outside tomorrow, 10 a.m. I'll send the address." She gave a small nod. Then, as he turned to leave, she called softly, "Damon." He stopped. "If you walk away again," she said without turning, "don't ever come back." His voice was hoarse. "I won't." And with that, he slipped out the door, leaving her in the kitchen, bottle in hand, heart in limbo. It was supposed to be a goodbye. One last meeting. A final signature. A quiet ending to what once burned like wildfire. The hotel suite was high above the city. Floor-to-ceiling windows, white linens, cold air conditioning. The kind of sterile luxury Damon preferred. He'd asked to meet her there to finalize the divorce. His tone over the phone had been polite, detached, businesslike. But when Noelle stepped through the door, something in the air shifted. She wore a simple dress. No makeup. Hair pinned up. Damon stood by the window, hands in his pockets, staring at the skyline. He didn't turn immediately. When he did, his expression betrayed him. That was the moment she realized he hadn't moved on either. The lawyers had finished their part. All that was left was a signature. But instead of signing, Noelle asked, "Why did you really leave?" Damon's jaw flexed. "We've been over this." "No," she said, stepping closer. "We danced around it. You gave me that polished excuse. I'm broken, I don't do family, but that's not the whole truth." He looked away. She pressed. "So say it. Say the real reason." He exhaled sharply. "Because I was scared. Because I looked at you every morning and thought, what if I ruin her too? Because I knew I couldn't protect you from what's inside me." Noelle's voice cracked. "I never asked you to protect me. I asked you to choose me." "I did," he said quietly. "And then I let you go. Because I thought that was the kindest thing I could do." Silence ballooned between them. Then she whispered, "I still love you, Damon." His head dropped. "I don't want to," she continued, "but I do. And it hurts." When he finally looked at her, his eyes were glassy. "I've never stopped loving you," he admitted, "but I'm no good at it." She took a step forward. He didn't move. Another step. Still no reaction. Then she reached up and touched his face, gently, like she was remembering how it felt to trace his jawline with sleepy fingers. He leaned into her palm, and that was all it took. Their lips met. No build-up. No words. Just raw need, months of distance, heartbreak, and unresolved longing boiling over in one furious kiss. She pulled his tie loose. He slipped the zipper on her dress down in one fluid motion. Clothes scattered across the suite. He backed her toward the bed, their mouths never parting. His hands cupped her face like she was something sacred. She clung to his shoulders like she was about to fall. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. His mouth moved down her neck, past her collarbone, to the place beneath her ribs where she always shivered. She gasped when he pushed into her. Slow, deep, familiar. Their rhythm wasn't practiced, but desperate. Noelle arched beneath him, eyes fluttering shut, the weight of 1,000 unsaid things crashing between them. He gripped her thighs, his voice ragged in her ear. "I don't want this to be the last time." "Then stay," she begged. But he didn't answer, because even then, he had already made up his mind. Later, they lay tangled in silence. Her head rested on his chest. His fingers trailed patterns across her back. For a moment, it felt like it used to, like the world outside didn't exist, like they were still whole. But the clock ticked louder than either of them could ignore. And just before dawn, he rose. She stirred as he gathered his clothes. "Don't go," she murmured. He froze, turned. Their eyes met. And in the quiet, she said, "We can figure it out. We can go to therapy. We can try again. Please, Damon, don't leave me like this." He stood in the half-light, shirt halfway buttoned, his face torn. Then he stepped forward, cupped her face, and kissed her forehead. "You deserve better than what I can give," he whispered. "I'll only hurt you." And with that, he walked out, leaving behind warmth, Silence, and something more than heartbreak. Noel had lain in that bed for hours. Not crying, not moving, just empty. That was the last time she saw him. Until now. Back in the present, Noel stirred a pot of oatmeal on the stove. The memory still gripped her like a hand around her throat. She hadn't meant for that night to become anything more than closure. But 2 weeks later, when she woke up nauseous and dizzy, the truth hit her hard. At first, she thought it was the flu. Then she bought a test. Then 3. Then the ultrasound came, and with it, the shock of her life. Triplets. 3 little hearts. 3 lives. 3 reminders of a night that was supposed to be a goodbye. She had paced for hours after that appointment, thought about calling him, about showing up at his office. But every time she imagined his face, the way he looked when he walked out, she backed down. He didn't want a family. He didn't believe he deserved one. So she protected him from knowing, and protected herself from hoping. But now he was back. And the night they shared, that one desperate, beautiful mistake, had grown into the only 3 people who made her life make sense. The next morning came with no answers. Sunlight spilled through the blinds, striping the faded rug in golden dust. Noel sat at the tiny kitchen table with a bowl of cereal going soggy in front of her. The triplets were unusually quiet, all 3 tucked into their shared crib after a restless night. Maybe they sensed the tension in her limbs. Or maybe they were just tired, like their mother. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number, driver outside. 10 minutes. Damon. She stared at the screen like it had betrayed her. Was this what she wanted? Was she ready? Her mind said no. Her body said maybe. Her heart, it didn't answer at all. When she stepped outside, she half expected to find a sleek black car with tinted windows and a driver in uniform. What she didn't expect was Damon himself, standing next to the SUV, sleeves rolled up, hair slightly messy, a car seat in each hand. He looked like a man who hadn't slept. She narrowed her eyes. You didn't have to come yourself. I wanted to. Noel lifted Star into her arms while he opened the back door and buckled in the other 2. They drove in silence for the first 10 minutes. Noel stared out the window. He kept glancing at her, like he wanted to say something but didn't know how. Finally, she broke it. You said this place is safe. It is. Where? Midtown, top floor, 24/7 security, pediatrician on call, full kitchen, 3 bedrooms. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. So just like that, you buy us a new life? No, he said softly. I'm trying to rebuild what I destroyed. She looked at him. He didn't blink, didn't flinch. He meant it. The apartment building was sleek, towering, with a doorman who opened the door before they even reached it. Inside, everything smelled like lemon polish and fresh linen. The elevator was glass, revealing a view of the city she hadn't seen in over a year. She'd forgotten what clean floors looked like, what it felt like to be somewhere no one was shouting. When they reached the top floor, the door opened to a sunlit space with warm wood floors, big windows, and air conditioning that actually worked. The triplets stirred. Noel didn't move. Her arms were tight around Star. You okay? Damon asked. No, she said. But I'm here. He nodded. That was enough. Later, when the girls were fed and sleeping in their new cribs, gifts, of course, from Damon, Noel sat on the balcony with a glass of water. He stood beside her, hands in his pockets. This doesn't fix us, she said. I know. You're still you. He gave a tight smile. I was hoping I wasn't. She looked at him. Really looked. Why now? His eyes searched hers. Because I couldn't sleep knowing you were out there struggling with my kids. She swallowed hard. Do you think you can just walk back in and be their father? No, he said. I think I need to earn it. Silence passed like a quiet agreement. Then she said, I don't want your money. I know. And I don't want pity. You're the last woman I'd ever pity, Noel. She turned away, the weight in her chest refusing to lift. But, she added, I do need help. That admission burned on her tongue. She hadn't said those words in over a year. Not to anyone. Damon didn't gloat, didn't smirk. He simply said, Then I'm staying. The first night in the new apartment felt foreign. The bed sheets were soft. The walls didn't echo with neighbors yelling. The bathroom had hot water on command. But it wasn't home. Not yet. Noel stood in the doorway of the nursery and watched the triplets sleep. They looked smaller in this space. Or maybe she just felt smaller, being in a world that didn't require her to fight so hard. Damon approached quietly, holding a blanket in one hand. "I'll take the couch," he said. "Unless you want me somewhere else." She didn't answer, just walked past him to the kitchen. He followed. "Talk to me." She opened the fridge. Milk, fresh fruit, things she hadn't been able to afford in months. "I don't know how to need you without resenting you," she admitted. His eyes softened. "Then don't need me. Let me just show up." "For how long?" "As long as it takes." She leaned on the counter, staring at him. "I don't trust you. I don't expect you to." "I'm scared, Damon." He stepped closer. "Me too." She laughed under her breath. "At least we're both honest now." A long pause. Then she asked the question that had haunted her since the day he walked away. "Did you ever regret it? Leaving?" His eyes didn't move from hers. Every single day. And for the first time in a long time, Noelle believed him. The silence in Damon's penthouse was thick enough to choke on. All that money, all that space, and yet not a single laugh, not a cry, not a voice besides his own echoed off the polished stone walls. He stood in front of the tall window, untouched whiskey in hand, the city spread out below him like a board game he'd already conquered. The numbers were strong. His company's expansion was ahead of schedule. Tokyo had signed. Berlin was next. Helix Holdings was breaking records, and he was richer than he'd ever been. But for months now, nothing felt like enough. Not the parties, not the women, not the accolades. He had stopped going out altogether. Stopped pretending that empty dinners with models or heiresses or investors made sense. They all blended together. The same hollow conversations. The same practiced smiles. The same way they'd look at him like a prize to be won, not a man to be known. None of them ever asked him the one question that mattered. "Are you happy?" And if they had, he wouldn't know how to answer. Late nights had become his habit. He worked past midnight, slept only when exhaustion won the fight. Even then, he'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling, remembering. Her voice, her eyes, the way she used to laugh mid-kiss. He'd ruined it, walked away from the one woman who made him feel human. At the time, it felt like the right thing. Noelle had wanted love, family, roots. He didn't know how to give her any of it without breaking her. He thought walking away was an act of mercy, but lately, it just felt like cowardice. He set the whiskey down and walked into the study. On the wall, a photo of his late twin, Ethan, stared back at him. Same face, same eyes, different soul. Ethan had been the dreamer. The one with a conscience. The one who always believed people deserved second chances. Damon had lived most of his life trying not to become the man their father was. Cold, manipulative, detached. But in trying not to become him, he had isolated himself from everything good. Ethan's death was a blow that never healed. He died because of a deal Damon had approved. Not directly, but his signature had triggered a corporate storm. Ethan had tried to clean up the mess. He paid the price. Since then, Damon had lived with guilt sewn into his bones. That guilt turned into fear. Fear became detachment. And that detachment, it cost him the only woman he ever loved. He hadn't planned on finding her again. Not until a background check came across his desk. Routine vetting for a new hire, a woman who used to model. The file listed her former agency. Noelle's name came up in an old contract. He stared at it for hours. Then something made him dig deeper. When he found her address, his stomach dropped. Subsidized housing. No recent employment records. No modeling gigs. No traces of the woman who once lit up every red carpet she stepped on. Then the final blow, a note in the lease record. Single mother. 3 dependents. 3. He hadn't blinked in 2 straight minutes. Something snapped inside him. He picked up the phone. Had her file pulled. He called in favors. Quiet ones. Discreet. He wasn't trying to stalk her. He just needed to understand. He found photos. Blurry ones. A woman pushing a stroller. Tiny girls wrapped in the same patterned blankets. He zoomed in. Those eyes. Gray. Just like his. That night, he didn't sleep. He sat in the dark, lights off, heart thundering. The idea crashed into him like a runaway train. They could be his. They had to be his. He had counted the months. The timeline fit. His mind flashed to that night, the last night, the way she clung to him, the way her body trembled when he made love to her like it was the end of the world. And maybe it was. Maybe it was the end of the life they knew, and the beginning of something else entirely. The next morning, he called off every meeting. His assistant panicked. Investors questioned his sanity. He didn't care. He told the driver where to go, didn't stop to think about what he'd say when he saw her again. All he knew was that he had to. He had to see her face, had to look into those girls' eyes and know the truth for himself. He wasn't prepared for what he found. The building was worse than he imagined. Peeling paint, broken security gate, trash piled at the side entrance. He stood on the sidewalk for a moment, staring at the rusted mailbox. Then he saw her, wrestling with a stroller, a bag of groceries slung over her shoulder. She looked tired, thin, but still beautiful. Not in the polished way she used to be, not in silk or diamonds or designer makeup. This was something different. She was forged now, hardened, resilient, and still his heart skipped. Then he saw them. 3 girls, identical in size and face, all tucked into that stroller like sleeping angels. And just like that, the last of his denial shattered. They were his. He didn't need a test. He could feel it in his soul. The ache, the pull, the weight of responsibility he had tried so hard to avoid. It had found him anyway. He didn't know how to fix the past. But standing there on that sidewalk, heart pounding, one truth burned through the fog. He wanted to try. Damon rarely made personal calls. His assistant Caleb handled 90% of the legwork, calendar coordination, executive screenings, discreet PR. But this was personal. Too personal to delegate. He sat in the back of his SUV, laptop open, documents strewn across the seat beside him. "Pull up the file again," he told Caleb over speakerphone. There was a pause on the line, then a ping as the digital file loaded on his screen. Noel Baptiste, age 30, former model, no criminal record, no recent tax filings, 3 dependents. His jaw clenched. He scrolled slowly, absorbing every line. The address hit hardest. Unit 308, Stonehaven Apartments, East Atlanta. That was a long fall from the penthouse life they once shared. He whispered to himself, "Why didn't you tell me?" He had all the tools. His resources stretched further than most governments. He could trace offshore accounts, pull hidden surveillance, bypass city records without leaving fingerprints. But this time, he didn't want power. He wanted truth. So he kept it simple. 2 hours after seeing the file, Damon drove out to the address himself. No driver, no assistant, just him behind the wheel of a black sedan, taking back roads to a part of town he hadn't seen in years. It was jarring. Fast food wrappers on sidewalks, kids playing barefoot in the street, a mattress leaning against a chain-link fence, sun-bleached and forgotten. He parked a block away and walked the rest. Every step closer to her door felt like a countdown. The building was worse than it looked in the reports. A hollowed-out hallway, faint smell of bleach and baby powder, old music playing faintly from another unit, someone arguing downstairs. When he reached Unit 308, he stood there for a long minute, listening. He could hear soft voices, a baby giggling, and then a laugh. Not Noel's full laugh, just a trace of it. The sound punched the breath from his lungs. He raised his hand to knock and stopped. Would she slam the door in his face? Would she even let him speak? Would she recognize how much it had taken for him to show up at all? He stepped back, hands in his pockets, uncertain for the first time in years. This was unfamiliar territory. Vulnerability, real stakes. He left without knocking that day. But the next morning, he returned, this time with a plan. He called in a favor with a pediatric network he'd once invested in. Got the names of the 3 children associated with that apartment. Confirmed, Lonnie Ashford Baptiste, Neva Ashford Baptiste, Star Ashford Baptiste. The names hit him like a freight train. She hadn't listed him as father, but she'd given them his name. It was both an invitation and a warning. "I didn't tell you, but I never denied you." He sat at his desk that night, staring at their names printed across a white page. Ashford, not legally binding, but symbolically, everything. He ran his hand through his hair, heart pounding. She had carried them, named them, raised them. Alone. He'd been building empires while she was choosing between diapers and electricity. His hands curled into fists. How could he fix something this deep? Could he? Caleb entered the office without knocking. "Sir," he said, "you've missed your Tokyo call. They're waiting." "I'm not going." Caleb blinked. "Sir?" Damon looked up, eyes sharper than usual. "Push the trip, indefinitely." There was a pause. "You've never missed a launch meeting." "I don't care." Caleb studied him. "Is this about her?" Damon didn't answer, but Caleb understood. He nodded once. "I'll handle it." When the door clicked shut behind him, Damon leaned back in his chair and stared at the ceiling. He had made 1,000 hard choices in his life, but this one felt different, because this wasn't just about business. It was about blood, and love, and maybe redemption. The next morning, he stood on the sidewalk outside her building again. Only this time, he didn't hesitate. He walked up to the rusted gate, slipped inside, climbed the cracked stairs, and knocked, once, then twice, then, finally, the door opened, and there she was. Damon had faced boardrooms filled with hostile investors. He'd stared down senators, CEOs, and cutthroat rivals with calm precision. But standing in front of Noelle's door, heart thudding, palms damp, none of those victories mattered. This wasn't a negotiation. This was personal. When she opened the door, her expression didn't flicker. No gasp, no smile, no warmth, just stillness. Then, a single word, "Damon." It wasn't a greeting. It was a reckoning. He took a step forward. She blocked the doorway with her body, arms crossed. Behind her, he caught a glimpse of a cluttered living room, a pink onesie on the couch, a bottle on the table. And then he saw them. 3 baby girls in matching onesies, tucked into a bassinet, sleeping. His breath caught. His lips parted, but nothing came out. She followed his gaze. "They're yours." 3 words, a thunderclap to the chest. He blinked. Once. Twice. The room swam around him. "Triplets?" he asked, barely audible. Noelle nodded. His knees nearly gave. He stepped back, pressing a hand to the wall as if steadying himself. "I didn't know," he whispered. "I know," she said. "I didn't tell you." "Why?" She met his eyes, unflinching. "Because I knew what you'd do." His brows furrowed. "You'd write checks," she continued. "You'd fly in lawyers. You'd try to control everything. That's not what we needed. We..." She nodded toward the bassinet. "Them. Me. I didn't want to be a project. I wanted to be a mother, a real one, not someone waiting for child support with a platinum card." He swallowed hard. "Noelle, I never would have walked away if I knew." She laughed softly. "You walked away knowing I still loved you, knowing I was terrified, knowing I begged you to stay. That was enough." Her voice cracked. Just slightly. It gutted him. "I was broken." "No. You were selfish." He didn't argue. Couldn't. Silence fell between them. One of the babies stirred. A small cry. Noelle turned, instinctively lifting the child into her arms. She held her with a gentle grace that broke Damon in ways nothing else had. The child nestled into her neck, whimper fading into soft breath. He watched, throat tight. "I want to help," he said. She glanced over her shoulder. "Too late. Let me try." "Why now?" "I found out you were living like this, with 3 babies, alone. I couldn't ignore it." Her jaw tensed. "You ignored me just fine for over a year." He stepped forward, lowering his voice. "That was a mistake. The worst one I've ever made." Her eyes flicked to the child in her arms. "Every diaper, every fever, every night I went without sleep. I made peace with doing it alone. You shouldn't have had to, but I did." They stared at each other, the weight of 1,000 unsaid things pressing between them. He let out a breath. "I'm not here to take over, or to fix things with a credit card." "Then why are you here?" He stepped closer. "Because I want to know them. Because I miss you. Because walking away didn't erase how I feel." She didn't soften. She didn't crumble. But her grip on the baby shifted. Slightly. He noticed. She said, "They don't know you." "Then introduce me." A long pause. Then she said, "If I let you in, even a little, and you disappear again, it'll destroy them." His voice dropped. "Then I'll stay, no matter what. No matter what." He reached out his hand, not toward her, but toward the child in her arms. She hesitated. Then slowly she placed the baby in his arms. The little girl blinked up at him, sleepy and unfazed. He held her close, gently rocking her. His hands trembled, just slightly. "I missed their birth," he murmured. "I missed the first laugh. The first tooth. You can't get that time back. I know. But you can be here now." He looked up, eyes locked. And in that quiet, something shifted. Not forgiveness, not yet. But maybe a start. Hello, my dearest family of love and twilights. If this story touches a place in your heart yet, please do well to hit the like button. And if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe because this is just the beginning. Stay until the story unfolds. Now let's continue. The next morning was humid, sticky, and full of weight. Noelle wrestled with the stroller as she tried to guide it down the crumbling front steps of the apartment complex. One hand on the handlebar, the other gripping a bulging grocery bag that refused to stay balanced. The girl squirmed, whined, and fussed beneath the shade of the stroller canopy. Lonnie had dropped her pacifier for the third time. Neva had managed to kick off her sock again. Star was already halfway to a full-blown wail. And Noelle? She was a breath away from losing it. She paused on the sidewalk, bent to pick up the pacifier, and whispered under her breath, "Just get through the day." Then she heard it. That voice, the one she'd spent a year trying to erase from her memory. Noelle. She straightened, spinning slowly. There he was, Damon, standing at the curb beside a sleek black car, wearing a navy shirt with sleeves rolled and no tie. Not a hair out of place, not a bead of sweat, too put together for the chaos of her world. "What are you doing here?" she asked flatly. "I said I'd come back, and I told you not to if you weren't serious." "I am." She shook her head and turned back to the stroller. "We're busy. I'll walk with you." "I don't want you to." He stepped in anyway, walking beside her like they hadn't been estranged for over a year. They didn't speak for a moment, just the sound of her shoes scraping the pavement and the distant siren wail in the background. Then he said, "I didn't sleep. Not my problem. I kept seeing them." She glanced at him, tired and unamused. "Then imagine living with them, alone. Since birth." His jaw clenched. They reached the corner. She stopped, waiting for the signal to change. Damon studied the triplets, then crouched slightly, brushing a fallen curl from Neva's forehead. "They have your nose," he said. "No. They have your eyes." Silence again. Then he stood up straight, face unreadable. "Let me help. You keep saying that. Because I mean, it." She exhaled harshly, pulling the stroller forward again. "You can't just walk in and play savior." "I don't want to be a savior." "Then what?" "A father." She stopped, dead in her tracks, turned toward him. "A father?" she repeated, voice rising. "You walked out on me before I even knew I was pregnant. You left without a fight, without a question, without a second glance. And now, because you saw a few diapers and heard a few cries, you think you can just claim a title you haven't earned?" His face twisted, not in anger, but in shame. "I know what I missed. I know what I cost you." "You don't," she hissed. "You have no idea what it was like watching my body change, terrified and alone, holding my stomach at night, praying I could afford another sonogram, sleeping on the couch because I couldn't make it up the stairs without throwing up, then giving birth to 3 girls and hearing the nurse ask, 'Is the father on his way?' while I bled into a mattress and lied." Her voice cracked. A man passed by and glanced at them with mild curiosity. Damon stepped closer. "I'm not trying to rewrite the past," he said gently. "But I can be here now, and not just with money. I want to change diapers, feed them, rock them at 3 a.m. I want to be a real presence." She looked away, blinking back tears. "What if you change your mind?" she whispered. "I won't. You did once, and I regret it every day." She didn't speak, just stood there, fierce, wounded, and undecided. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "This is a lease," he said. "Top-floor apartment, Midtown. I paid for the year. No strings." She stared at it. "I don't want a penthouse," she said. "I want stability. That's what I'm offering. No, stability is consistent. Stability stays when it's hard." He stepped forward again. "I'll prove it. Day by day. I'll show up. Every single time." She didn't reach for the paper. But she didn't walk away either. That was enough for now. Noelle sat at the edge of her sagging couch later that evening, the lease Damon had handed her lying untouched on the coffee table. The girls were finally asleep, all three curled in the crib, their breathing soft and steady. Her apartment was dim, lit only by a single floor lamp. Shadows stretched across the walls like reminders of every sleepless night she'd endured alone. She stared at the lease. 1 year, fully paid. No catch, no clause, no contract with her name in fine print. But that wasn't what troubled her. What troubled her was him. There was a soft knock on the door. She didn't move. Another knock, quiet, deliberate. She sighed, stood, and opened it. Damon. He wasn't dressed like a billionaire. Just jeans and a plain black t-shirt, the kind he used to wear on lazy Sundays when they'd stay in bed past noon. He looked tired, almost like her. "I shouldn't be here this late," he said. "No," she agreed. "You shouldn't." But she stepped aside. He entered silently. Her apartment hadn't changed. Same couch, same flickering light, same rickety table covered in formula receipts and crayon scribbles. He glanced at the crib. "They're asleep?" She nodded. He exhaled. "They're perfect." Noelle crossed her arms. "You sure you want this?" Damon turned to face her. "I'm not here for a moment of guilt. I'm here because I can't imagine spending another day pretending like those girls aren't mine." She looked him dead in the eye. "They are." No hesitation, no pause. He swallowed. "So, you knew?" "I always knew. 3 daughters." She nodded. His hands dropped to his sides. "And you never told me." "I wanted to." 1,000 times, she said, voice steady. "But every time I thought about it, I saw your face the day you left. That cold look in your eyes, like everything we had was disposable. It wasn't. You said you didn't do family. I was scared." "I was too," she shot back. "But I didn't get to walk away." He looked down, guilt carving lines across his expression. "I wanted to tell you after the ultrasound," she said, softer now. "But I was already showing, and I hadn't heard from you, not once. So I took that silence as my answer. I was wrong." "No," she corrected. "You were a coward." That word stung, but he didn't deny it. They stood in silence, both trying to breathe through years of resentment and pain. Noelle finally asked, "What do you really want?" He walked over to the crib, peered down at the girls. Lonnie had one arm flung over her chest, Star was curled like a cat, and Neva had kicked off her blanket entirely. He smiled softly. "I want to be their father." She waited. "I want to wake up to their cries and not feel helpless. I want to read them stories, wipe their mouths, be at their birthday parties. I don't want to miss another second." "And me?" she asked. He turned. "I want you too." Her breath caught. "But not as a fantasy," he added. "Not as some perfect version of who we used to be. I want you now, raw, complicated, and mad as hell." She blinked, stunned. "I'm not the same woman," she whispered. "And I'm not the same man." "No," she agreed. "You're better dressed." That pulled a laugh from him. The first real one, all day. She sat on the couch. He followed. "I don't trust you," she said plainly. "I get it. I don't know how to let you close without fearing you'll disappear again. I'll prove I won't." "Words are cheap. So are apologies," he said. "That's why I didn't bring one." She glanced at him, puzzled. "I'm not sorry I loved you," he clarified. "I'm not sorry for the life we had, but I'm sorry for thinking I could bury it." She stared at him for a long time, then whispered, "I hate that I still love you. I hate that you think that's something to hate." She looked down at her hands. Worn, tired, still strong. He reached over, gently took one. "I'm not offering a rescue, Noelle. I'm offering everything." She didn't pull away. She didn't lean in either. She just let his hand rest in hers. For now, that was enough. Damon didn't stay long after that. Just long enough to check on each baby, tuck a blanket around Neva, and say a quiet goodnight. He didn't ask for a kiss. Didn't reach for more than she was willing to give. Noelle walked him to the door. He paused before stepping out, glancing back at her with something between longing and regret. "Tomorrow," he said. "I'll be back. 10 a.m. She nodded. The next morning came earlier than usual. Noelle barely slept. Even when the girl stayed quiet, her mind spun in endless circles. Could she let him back in? Could she risk letting her daughters fall in love with a man who once walked away from all of them? She stood at the sink rinsing out a bottle when the knock came. Same rhythm, same hesitation. Damon. When she opened the door, he wasn't alone. Behind him stood a woman in her 40s with soft brown eyes and a clipboard. "This is Olivia," Damon said. "She's a child care specialist. I hired her to assist you. Not replace you, just help." Noel's eyebrows rose. "You brought a nanny?" "No," he said calmly. "I brought support. She'll stay only if you're comfortable." Olivia smiled gently. "Miss Baptiste, I'm just here to help you breathe, not take over." Noel looked past them at the hallway. A dolly sat nearby stacked with boxes, diapers, baby wipes, formula, a brand new car seat still in plastic wrap. "You brought all this?" she asked. Damon nodded. "No gifts," she said immediately. "They're not gifts," he replied. "They're what I should have been providing since day one." She folded her arms. "You think all this earns you a second chance?" "No," he said, "but it gives you room to decide if you want to give me one." She didn't answer. Instead, she led Olivia inside, watched as the woman walked toward the babies with practiced calm. Then she turned back to Damon. "You really think money fixes this?" His expression didn't change. "I don't think anything fixes it. I think presence does. Time, patience. Then stop showing up with receipts. I'm showing up with consistency." Noel's mouth pressed into a line. She hated that part of her was grateful. The other part resented how easily he could make everything look clean again. "You can't buy their love," she said. "I know. And you can't buy mine. I'm not trying to—" "Then what are you doing?" "Staying," he said simply. "Showing up, earning my way back. Not just into their lives, into yours." She said nothing for a long while. The girls started crying in the other room. Olivia moved swiftly, calming them, her tone gentle and expert. Noel turned a glance. When she looked back, Damon was still standing there, hands in his pockets, waiting. Not demanding, not pushing, waiting. She exhaled. "I don't need a full-time nanny. She'll stay part-time. I don't want luxury. I offered safety. I don't trust you." "I'm not asking you to," he said. "I'm asking you to watch, day by day, see if I mean it." She stepped closer, looked him in the eyes. "You hurt me. I know. You walked away when I needed you most. I hate myself for that." Her eyes welled. "I raised them without you, and you did it beautifully." A tear slipped free. "Don't you dare leave again," she whispered. "I won't." They stood in that narrow hallway, nothing extravagant between them. No glamour, no ceremony. Just pain, possibility, and 3 sleeping miracles down the hall. Noel wiped her cheek and stepped back. "You can stay," she said, "but on my terms." He nodded. "No overnight visits, no strings, no assumptions. Done. You earn this the hard way. I expect nothing less." She looked him over. Same man. New resolve. And maybe, just maybe, a shot at something real. Noel had never ridden in a car that quiet. Not just in sound, in energy. The hum of the engine, the soft leather, the smooth turns through Midtown. It should have been calming, but to her, it felt like a warning. A reminder that comfort had a cost. The triplets slept peacefully in their new car seats, lulled by the rhythm of the ride. Damon sat beside her in the back, silent, his attention mostly on the girls. Every few seconds he'd glance her way, as if searching for a crack in her expression. She gave him none. The building came into view minutes later. High-rise, sleek, polished windows that reflected the morning sky. No cracks in the pavement, no flickering hallway lights, no smell of mildew or neighbors fighting in the next room. As they stepped out of the car, the doorman greeted Damon with a nod, already expecting them. "Welcome back, Mr. Ashford." Noel's jaw tensed at the formality. He still lived in a world where people knew his name before he spoke. She didn't. She pushed the stroller ahead of him. The elevator was glass, offering a panoramic view of the city. Too exposed. She kept her eyes on the buttons. When the doors opened, she stepped into a space so pristine it felt fictional. Warm lights spilled across the hardwood floors. The scent of fresh flowers drifted in from a vase on the kitchen island. 3 brand-new cribs were perfectly arranged in the nursery. A washer and dryer stood waiting. The cabinets were stocked with formula, baby food, and cleaning supplies. Even the bath towels were rolled. It was overwhelming. She set the diaper bag down on the counter and turned to him slowly. "You set all this up?" "I had help," he said carefully. "But yes." She ran a hand along the countertop. Granite, not the cracked laminate she'd gotten used to. She turned away, suddenly uneasy. He followed her into the nursery as she laid the girls down one by one. Each baby settled quickly, soothed by the soft hum of the sound machine. Damon stood in the doorway, watching. Noelle smoothed Star's blanket and whispered, "They don't need perfection. They need peace." "I know. And this," she gestured to the space, "doesn't change who raised them when it wasn't easy. I'm not trying to erase your sacrifices, Noelle." "Good," she said, standing, "because I carry every one of them." They moved into the living room. She didn't sit. He did, not like a man taking control, but like one asking permission. "I know this is a lot," he began. "It is. I should have come back sooner." "You think?" She snapped, instantly regretting how sharp it came out. He didn't flinch. "I want this to feel like yours," he said. "It's not. I want you to make it one." She crossed her arms. "You're buying time, Damon, and you think I don't see it." He looked up. "No, I'm buying room, so you don't have to choose between groceries and rent while deciding whether or not to forgive me." She exhaled and leaned against the wall. "You want a second chance?" "Yes." "Then stop trying to impress me." "I'm not," he said. "I'm trying to show you I'm different." She was quiet for a beat, then asked, "What about your life?" He frowned. "Your job, your schedule, your priorities. Are you really going to sit in here and warm bottles while the world waits for you to make billion-dollar calls?" "Yes." She raised an eyebrow. "Because nothing out there is more important than what I left behind." Her breath caught. He stood slowly, stepping toward her, voice softer. "I don't want to play the provider who shows up with gifts. I want to be here, to fail with you, to learn with you, to change diapers and lose sleep and earn back what I destroyed." He was closer now. She didn't back away. "Living here doesn't make us a family," she said. "I know. You're not forgiven. I don't expect to be. But you're really staying?" He nodded. "For as long as it takes." She held his gaze. He didn't blink, didn't flinch, didn't run. For once, that meant something. She walked past him, into the kitchen, opened the fridge, and poured herself a glass of water. He stood silently behind her, giving space. After a moment, she asked without turning, "What's your end game?" "There isn't one." She looked over her shoulder. He stepped closer. "If you let me back in, there's no exit plan, no end, no halfway. And if I don't?" He paused. "I'll still be their father, still show up, still provide. But it'll never be enough if I'm not doing it with you." Her walls trembled. She hated that he still had this power, hated even more that he wasn't trying to use it. He wasn't seducing. He wasn't persuading. He was just there, present, accountable, maybe even sincere. She set the glass down, turned, stared at him for a long time. "You can sleep on the couch." He nodded. "No touching, no kissing, no sweet talk." "I wouldn't dare," he said, raising a hand. "And no illusions," she added. "We're not okay. Not yet." He smiled faintly. "Noted." Then as he turned to go set up his makeshift bed, she called after him, "Damon." He looked back. "Don't make me regret this." He didn't say anything. He just nodded, the kind of nod that held weight, not promises. And for the first time in a long while, she didn't feel like she was drowning. The first night under the same roof again passed like a test neither of them had studied for. Damon lay on the couch in a white t-shirt and sweatpants, staring at the ceiling while the city glowed beyond the balcony doors. He heard the creak of the nursery door, then the soft shuffle of Noelle's footsteps down the hall. She was checking on the girls. Again. Third time in 2 hours. He understood. Trust didn't return just because he'd shown up with blankets and promises. She returned quietly, padding into the kitchen without glancing his way. He heard the click of the kettle. Footsteps paused. Cabinet door opened. Mug clinked. Then silence again. He sat up. "Can't sleep?" he asked softly. She didn't look back. "I haven't slept properly in months. I used to work until 3 a.m. just to avoid the quiet." She turned slightly. "Why?" He hesitated. Because the quiet reminded me of you." Her eyes flicked toward him, then back to the kettle. She poured water into a mug, stirred. Chamomile, no sugar, still her favorite. She carried it to the counter and stood, sipping slowly, her back still half turned. He rose from the couch, moved cautiously to the kitchen doorway. Not too close, but not hiding either. "I saw you in everything," he said. "In crowds, in mirrors, even in other women." She tensed. He noticed. "Not in that way," he added quickly. "No one touched me like you did. No one ever could." She stayed quiet. The air pulsed. He stepped a little closer. "I don't want to make you uncomfortable," he said. "You don't," she replied. "Then why won't you look at me?" She set the mug down slowly. "I'm scared," she said, barely above a whisper. He waited. "Scared that I'll fall for you again." She continued. "And this time, it'll hurt worse." He exhaled. "I won't leave. You did once. I won't again." Words, Damon. You're good at them. He moved a step closer. "I don't want to say it anymore," he said. "I want to show it, every day, until you believe me, until they believe me." She finally turned. Her face was tired but unguarded. He took another step forward, then stopped. "You look at me like you still see the man who broke you," he said. "I do," she admitted. "But I also see the man who held my hand during contractions, the man who used to hum old jazz songs in the shower, the man who once kissed my forehead in his sleep." His voice cracked. "I miss that man." "Then be him again." They stood in silence. The kettle clicked again. Empty now. The tension didn't break. It shifted, changed shape, went from something jagged to something aching. She picked up the mug again, took a sip, then said quietly, "There's a towel and extra blanket in the hallway closet, in case you get cold." He gave her a soft nod. "Good night, Damon. Good night, Noelle." She walked away. He stood in the kitchen a little longer, eyes fixed on where she had just stood. And for the first time since moving in, he let himself hope. The next morning, Damon was already dressed when Noelle entered the kitchen. Pajama shorts, tank top, hair tied in a scarf, still stunning. He was feeding Star in her high chair, carefully balancing the spoon as if it were a fragile experiment. Star cooed between bites. Noelle watched from the doorway, arms folded. "You're good at that." He glanced back. "I've had 6 YouTube tutorials and a war with 3 bibs." She smirked. "You'll survive." He looked her in the eyes. "I'm not here to survive. I'm here to stay." The room shifted. Again, later that afternoon they played music in the background, soft Motown, while folding laundry together. No one said it, but both of them felt it. The tension wasn't disappearing. It was maturing, becoming something quieter, heavier, more complicated. At one point their hands brushed over the same baby sock. Neither moved away. And when their fingers lingered for just a second too long, Noelle said softly, "Don't rush this." "I'm not," he said. "I'm savoring it." And that scared her more than if he'd tried to seduce her, because the man who used to run from emotion now sat beside her, folding onesies and holding silence like it was sacred. That night, she passed him in the hallway. Their arms brushed. Neither said a word, but their eyes did. And suddenly, the tension didn't feel like a wall anymore. It felt like a doorway waiting to be opened. By the 3rd night, the rhythm of shared space had taken hold. Damon woke early, made coffee, changed diapers. He didn't announce his efforts, didn't boast. He simply did what needed to be done. And Noelle noticed. She noticed how he picked up pacifiers before she could bend down, how he wiped down counters after every meal, how he kept his voice low when the girls were sleeping, how he never crossed the line, not once, not even when her body brushed his in the hallway, not even when she stepped out of the bathroom in a robe, not even when she fell asleep on the couch and woke up with a blanket tucked around her shoulders. He was present, engaged, careful, and that made it harder, because the Damon she had loved could charm anyone. But this version, this quiet, intentional man, he could stay. They sat in the nursery one evening, the twins asleep and Star refusing to go down. Noelle rocked gently, holding the baby against her chest. Damon knelt beside them, gently patting Star's back. They worked as a team, no instructions needed. Eventually, Star's breath evened, and her tiny fists relaxed. Damon stood, stepping back as Noelle laid her in the crib. Together they tiptoed out and pulled the door shut behind them. In the hallway, they paused. She looked at him. "You're patient with them. They deserve it." "You're patient with me." He nodded. She hesitated. "I need to ask you something," she said. "Anything. If this goes nowhere, if we never get back to that place, will you still be here?" He didn't blink. "Yes." No hesitation? None. She swallowed hard. "I'm still angry, Damon. You should be. I'm still hurt. I'm not expecting you to pretend you're not." She stepped closer, and this time her voice dropped. "I miss you." His breath hitched. "I miss you too," he said, barely above a whisper. Her gaze held his. "But I'm not ready." He nodded. "I won't push." She exhaled, then stepped back. "Thank you," she said, and meant it. The next day was quiet. The girls were calm. The sun was warm. The apartment felt lived in, not staged. Noelle cooked breakfast. Damon washed dishes. They passed each other with ease. No tension. No spark threatening to ignite. Just ease. She caught him humming under his breath at one point, a familiar tune from years ago. Sinatra. Her chest tightened. She remembered lazy mornings wrapped in sheets, his voice off key, his hand on her hip. She stirred the eggs harder, trying to shake the memory. But it lingered. Later, when the girls went down for their afternoon nap, Noelle stepped onto the balcony with a cup of tea. Damon joined her a moment later. They stood in silence. The city buzzed beneath them. Traffic, life, possibility. "You ever regret it?" she asked. "What?" "Walking away. Every single day." She nodded slowly. "You ever wonder what we would have been like if you hadn't?" "I do," he said. "But I also wonder who I would have become if I hadn't come back." She turned to him, eyes soft. "You're not that man anymore." "I hope not. I don't hate you," she added. "But I need to protect my heart." He reached for her hand, but stopped before touching. A silent question. She looked at his hand, then placed hers in it. Not tightly, not possessively, but willingly. "I'm here," he said. She nodded. "But I need time," she whispered. He squeezed gently. "Take all of it." That night, she passed by the couch where he slept. He had one of the triplets curled on his chest, Neva, already snoring softly. Noelle watched from the hallway, one hand pressed to her lips. He didn't even notice her there, just kept breathing, his hand rising and falling with their daughter's tiny frame. And for the first time in months, she didn't feel alone in the weight of motherhood. Damon had conquered companies, chaired global summits, negotiated with world leaders, but nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared him for changing a diaper while being screamed at by 3 tiny dictators with matching faces. Star wailed the loudest. Neva wriggled like a fish out of water. And Lonnie? Lonnie just stared at him like she was judging every move. "You could at least blink, Lonnie," he muttered under his breath. "Give a man some credit." From the doorway, Noelle smirked, arms crossed. "You're putting the diaper on backward." He blinked, looked down. Sure enough, the tabs were inside out. "I've been ambushed," he said. "You've been outnumbered," she replied, stepping in. "Slide over." He did, watching closely as she maneuvered like a pro. Wipes, powder, fresh diaper, all in under 45 seconds. He was still in awe of her. Not because she made it look easy, but because she never complained. She hadn't had help for months, and yet her movements were steady, efficient, full of care. "Try the next one," she said, handing him the supplies. He nodded. This time, he got it right, mostly. Later that morning, all 3 girls sat in a semicircle on a playmat while Damon sprawled on the floor, crisscross applesauce, holding a plush giraffe in one hand and a set of stacking cups in the other. Neva kept crawling into his lap. Star chewed on a wooden rattle. Lonnie reached for his nose. He let her grab it. "Gentle," he warned softly, even as she tugged. She grinned, drool pooling at the corners of her mouth. He chuckled. "You're savage." Noelle watched from the kitchen, coffee in hand. The man in the suit was gone. This was a new version, barefoot, shirt wrinkled, hair a mess, and happier than she'd ever seen him. He laughed when Neva knocked over the cup tower. He clapped when Star babbled something that almost sounded like "da-da." He kissed Lonnie's cheek when she curled into his chest without invitation. And in those moments, Noelle saw not a CEO, but a father. At lunchtime, Damon burned the grilled cheese. "Okay, but hear me out," he said, fanning the smoke. "I used to have a chef." Noelle coughed and opened the windows. Clearly, he offered her a sheepish smile, holding a fire extinguisher like it might turn on him. She took the ruined sandwich and bit into the less charred corner. Still edible. Barely. B-, she said. Rough crowd. The girls watched from their high chairs, curious and messy. Damon leaned down and wiped applesauce off Star's chin, then kissed her forehead like it was second nature. That afternoon, he carried Lonnie in a baby carrier strapped to his chest while vacuuming the living room. Noelle nearly dropped her phone laughing. "What? You look like an exhausted kangaroo." He glanced down. "She's drooling on my shirt. She's marking her territory." Great. But he didn't complain. Not when Neva spit up on his sleeve. Not when Star knocked over a bowl of puffs and screamed like she'd lost a kingdom. He stayed calm, patient, present. That night, Noelle sat on the couch folding laundry while Damon rocked one of the girls to sleep in the nursery. The soft hum of his voice reached her ears, a lullaby with no words, just sound, comforting, gentle. She stopped folding, closed her eyes, let the stillness wrap around her like a hug she didn't know she needed. When he returned to the living room, she looked up. He was barefoot, shirt slightly wrinkled, exhaustion written all over his face, but he was smiling. "What?" he asked. "You look tired, human." He laughed quietly. "Feels that way." She set a onesie down. "You're good with them. I'm learning. You're better than I expected." He walked over, sat beside her, close enough that their knees brushed. "I want to get better," he said. "You already are." They didn't look at each other, but they didn't move apart either. The silence between them wasn't tense anymore. It was warm, lived in, safe. He stood eventually, heading to the kitchen. She followed. "I'm thinking of canceling Tokyo for good," he said, reaching into the fridge. She raised an eyebrow. "That's dramatic." "Not really. I don't need the trip. I need this." She tilted her head. "What is this, Damon?" He leaned against the counter, held her gaze. "Home." Her heart skipped. She didn't respond right away, just stared at him, then said, "Don't say that if you're going to disappear again." "I'm not going anywhere." "You used to say that too." He stepped closer. "I don't say things I don't mean anymore." She studied his face, looking for cracks, rehearsed charm, manipulation, but she found none. Only sincerity, and something deeper. Something like love. It started with the little things. A hand brushing hers when they passed in the hallway. A soft laugh shared over spilled milk and mismatched socks. The way he stood beside her at the kitchen sink and wordlessly dried dishes while she washed. Noelle didn't mean to lean into the quiet intimacy. Didn't mean to start noticing the shape of his shoulders again. Or the way his voice lowered whenever he spoke to the girls. Or how he'd glance at her when he thought she wasn't looking, like he was still stunned she was even there. It wasn't like before, when everything had been loud and fast and wrapped in silk. Now, it was steady, worn in, safe, and somehow, that made it more dangerous. One night, long after the girls had fallen asleep, Noelle wandered into the kitchen to find Damon sitting on the balcony, barefoot, sleeves rolled, a mug of tea in his hands. She hesitated, then opened the door and stepped out. He looked over, surprised, but pleased. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked. She shook her head. He handed her his mug. She sipped without asking what it was. Chamomile. Still warm. Still hers. They sat in silence for a moment, the city glowing beneath them. A breeze lifted the hem of her robe. She pulled it tighter. He noticed, but didn't speak. Didn't push. She appreciated that more than he knew. "You're quieter now," she said softly. "I was always quieter than you thought." She glanced at him. He looked different in moonlight. Softer. Realer. Like the man she used to love, stripped of the armor and ambition. "Why did you stop calling me?" she asked. He exhaled. "Because I thought you'd moved on." "I hadn't. I see that now." She turned toward him. "And you?" she asked. "Did you ever stop loving me?" He didn't hesitate. No. That answer settled between them like gravity. She stood slowly, walked to the railing, and looked out. He followed, but didn't touch her. Just stood near, close enough to feel, far enough to respect. I kept every photo of us, she confessed. Even when I hated you, I kept your toothbrush in my drawer for a year. That made her laugh, a quiet, genuine sound that hit him like sunlight. She turned to face him. Her eyes searched his. I'm scared. I know, but I still want you. He stepped closer. I never stopped wanting you. The space between them dissolved. He raised a hand to her face, slow and careful. Fingertips brushed her cheek. She didn't pull away. Her breath hitched. He leaned in, but paused just before their lips touched. Tell me no, he whispered, and I'll stop. She didn't. So he kissed her, gently, like the first time, like he had all the time in the world. The kiss deepened, slow and reverent. No urgency, no rush, just the weight of everything they hadn't said, melting into the softness of mouths and memory. When they pulled apart, her eyes were glassy. I forgot how safe this felt, she whispered. He rested his forehead against hers. Then let me help you remember. She nodded once, then stepped back. A signal, a boundary. He respected it, and said nothing when she turned and disappeared down the hallway. But before she closed the door to her room, she looked back and whispered, Good night, Damon. He smiled. Good night, Noelle. That night, neither of them slept. But for the first time, it wasn't because of pain. It was because hope had crept in where fear used to live. The days began to blur. Damon was everywhere, and yet never too much. He folded laundry while she bathed the girls. He cooked oatmeal in the mornings the way she liked it, cinnamon, no sugar. She no longer flinched when his hands brushed hers at the fridge, or when their shoulders touched while reaching for the same baby bottle. At night, she began to expect him on the balcony. 2 mugs, 2 chairs, no pressure, just presence. And in that quiet space between them, something old and sacred began to grow back. It was a Wednesday night when the current shifted. The girls had finally gone down early, all 3 snoring in sync. The apartment was dim. Rain tapped gently on the windows. Noelle came out of the shower wrapped in a towel, her skin damp, her curls wild and fresh. She wasn't expecting him in the hallway. He turned, stopped breathing. So did she. Her towel slipped slightly at the top, revealing the slope of one shoulder, the soft curve of damp skin. His eyes flicked away out of respect, but not before the hunger flickered. And she saw it. She didn't speak, didn't cover up. She walked past him, slowly, trailing the scent of warm water, honey, and rose oil. He followed, not with steps, but with eyes. She turned in the kitchen, met his gaze. Neither of them moved. Then she whispered, Do you still want me? His answer was already in his expression, but he said it anyway. Always. She stepped forward, close enough to feel his breath. Her hand brushed his chest, light, then firm, resting over his heartbeat. His hands stayed at his sides. Still, she asked, What happens if I let you in? His voice was hoarse. I'll never walk out again. She kissed him. No hesitation, just yes. His hands found her waist, her lower back, her thighs, like memory, like instinct. Her towel loosened, slipped. She let it fall. His breath caught. She stood bare before him, unafraid, unashamed. He stepped closer, eyes locked with hers, his touch reverent as he cupped her jaw and ran his thumb along her bottom lip. She opened her mouth for him. The kiss deepened, slow at first, then bruising. She whimpered when his tongue slid against hers, when his hand gripped her hip, when he lifted her onto the counter with ease. Their bodies tangled like old lovers, practiced but hungry. She wrapped her legs around his waist, pulling him close, gasping into his neck as he pressed against her heat through his jeans. His hands roamed, her thighs, her stomach, her breasts, as if relearning every inch of her. And she let him. Because this was different. This wasn't the cold rush of need. This was homecoming. Tell me to stop, he said against her ear, his voice ragged. I don't want you to stop, she whispered, biting his earlobe. He growled low in his throat, a sound she hadn't heard in so long it made her clench around nothing. She reached between them, unbuttoned his jeans, pulled him free. He was thick, hot, pulsing in her hand. He kissed her harder when she stroked him. She guided him to her entrance, slick, swollen, ready. And when he slid inside her, they both stilled. Eyes closed. Breath tangled. He held her hips. She held his face. And then they moved, slowly, in rhythm, in memory, in something so much deeper than just lust. He whispered her name like a prayer with every thrust. She wrapped her arms around his neck, her mouth open, her moans warm against his skin. His pace stayed steady, long strokes, deep, controlled. She cried out when he hit that spot, again and again, her nails sinking into his shoulders, her body trembling. "I've missed you," he murmured. "Don't stop," she begged. He didn't. He couldn't. Not until her body clenched around him, wave after wave of pleasure ripping through her as she arched, gasped, and finally let go. Only then did he let himself fall. With a groan he buried himself deep, stilling as he poured into her. They stayed like that, connected, breathless, shaking, alive. Later he carried her to bed. No words, just kisses, soft, grateful. She lay against him, skin still warm, hair spread across his chest. For a long time there was nothing but breathing and heartbeats. Then she whispered, "I didn't just miss the way you touched me." He looked down. She met his eyes. "I missed you." His arms tightened around her. "I'm here now," he said, "and I'm not going anywhere." And this time, she believed him. Morning didn't come softly. It came with squeals from the nursery and the sharp clang of a toy hitting the crib rails. Noelle stirred, her legs tangled with Damon's. Her head rested on his chest, skin to skin beneath the sheets. He was already awake, hand gently trailing slow lines across her back. Neither of them moved for a moment. It wasn't awkward. It wasn't rushed. It was quiet, warm, familiar. "Sounds like the queens are summoning us," he murmured, voice husky from sleep. Noelle smiled against his chest. "You take Star. She's the loudest." He chuckled. "We'll negotiate terms later." She tilted her head to look up at him. He kissed her forehead without thinking. Noelle didn't stop him, didn't flinch. In fact, she leaned into it. And just like that, the fear of the night being a one-time mistake faded. This wasn't a retreat. It was a return. 15 minutes later, they were both in the nursery. Damon shirtless, Noelle in one of his oversized t-shirts. Lonnie giggled as Damon made airplane noises, spoon-feeding her mashed banana. Noelle wiped applesauce from Neva's cheek. Star was already tossing puffs across the tray like confetti. "This one's a menace," Damon said, lifting Star from the high chair as she shrieked in delight. "She gets it from you." He raised a brow. "She's dramatic. That's definitely you." They locked eyes, laughed, and for a moment, just a moment, they felt like a family, whole. After breakfast, the girls went down for their nap faster than expected, which left the apartment filled with golden silence. Noelle leaned against the kitchen island, sipping water, while Damon stood at the stove, rinsing out the bottle sterilizer. "Last night," she said, voice soft. He turned. "Yeah? I don't regret it." He dried his hands on a dish towel and approached slowly. "Neither do I." She looked at him carefully. "But we can't slip into old habits." "We won't," he said. "I need to know this is real." He stepped closer, close enough that his warmth touched her skin. "It's as real as it gets. I'm not the woman you left, and I'm not the man who left you." That settled between them like a promise. He reached for her, fingers grazing her hip beneath the hem of the shirt. She didn't stop him. She stepped in, kissed him, not with hunger, but with heat. Slow, rich, lingering. She slid her arms around his neck. He gripped her thighs and lifted her onto the island. She wrapped her legs around his waist. Their kiss deepened, mouths hot and open, tongues tangling. But there was no rush, no tearing of clothes, no blind need, only reverence. His hand slid beneath the shirt, found her waist, her breast, the curve of her lower back. She arched into him, moaning softly into his mouth. "You're dangerous," she whispered. He kissed her jaw. "You taste like peace." She pulled his face back to hers, kissed him again, deeper, more deliberate. She guided his hand between her legs, already warm, already wet. His fingers moved slowly, deliberately, coaxing pleasure with the patience of a man who remembered her body like scripture. She trembled, tightened, came with his name on her lips, low, desperate, honest. He kissed her through it, held her, didn't rush to take, just gave. When she finally caught her breath, she looked at him with eyes still heavy with pleasure. He brushed a curl from her cheek. "That was for you." "And you?" He smiled. "Being close to you again is already more than I deserve." She kissed him one more time, slow, soft, certain. "Later," she whispered. "I'll wait." It was after midnight. The city outside was quiet, wrapped in velvet shadows. Noelle stood by the bedroom window, wearing nothing but a silk robe and the hum of anticipation. She hadn't planned to call him in, but she hadn't told him not to come either. Damon knocked once. She turned. He stepped in, slowly, silently, as if entering sacred ground. His eyes drank her in, not like a man claiming, but a man remembering, cherishing. She didn't speak. She just untied the knot at her waist and let the robe slip down her shoulders. It hit the floor in silence. His breath caught. She stepped forward, closed the space between them. Her fingers went to the hem of his t-shirt. He raised his arms wordlessly. She peeled it off, ran her hands over his chest, slow, reverent, then leaned in and kissed his sternum, soft, deliberate. He exhaled shakily. "Noelle," he whispered, but she shook her head. "Tonight, I lead." She backed toward the bed. He followed. She sat on the edge and pulled him close, undoing the button of his jeans, dragging the zipper down with aching slowness. He groaned as she freed him, already thick and heavy in her palm. But she didn't stroke. Not yet. She looked up at him. "Lie down." He obeyed, not because she demanded, because he trusted. She straddled him slowly, skin brushing skin, thighs hugging his hips. She dragged her fingers down his chest, lower, lower, until he hissed. He reached for her. She batted his hands away. "Patience." He chuckled, breathless. She hovered above him, letting him feel her heat, her slickness, but not giving him everything. Not yet. His hands gripped the sheets. "Noelle." She sank down on him in one smooth, deliberate motion. They gasped together. Then stillness, the kind that only comes when something holy is happening. She rolled her hips in slow, grinding circles. His hands moved to her thighs, holding on, grounding himself. But she kept control. She rode him slowly, purposefully, watching every twitch of his jaw, every shift in his breath. His hands drifted to her waist, her breasts, her throat. He whispered her name like a hymn, over and over, and when she leaned forward, bracing her hands on his chest, their mouths found each other again. Hot, open, starved. The tempo built, not rushed, but relentless. Her moans filled the room, matched by the deep groans rumbling from his chest. She moved faster, harder. Their sweat mingled, skin slick, breaths ragged. She came first, eyes fluttering, back arching. A long, broken cry as she clenched tight around him. He followed, one thrust later, holding her against him as he spilled deep inside her. They trembled together, then stilled. Noelle collapsed onto his chest, breathless. He wrapped his arms around her, holding her like something precious. Neither spoke for a long while, until she whispered, "That didn't feel like sex." He kissed the crown of her head. "It wasn't." She lifted her head and looked into his eyes. "What was it then?" "Everything we never said," he replied. She smiled, a slow, satisfied, knowing smile. And when she leaned in to kiss him again, slow, deep, indulgent, there was no hesitation. Only heat, only love, only them. Sunlight streamed through the curtains like a soft invitation. Noelle stirred first. Her limbs ached in the best way, not from exhaustion but from fulfillment, from connection. She was warm, safe, and not alone. Damon's arm was slung around her waist, his chest pressed against her back. She could feel his breath, steady and slow against the curve of her neck. For a moment, she didn't move. She just let herself be, no second-guessing, no panic. Just this, morning wrapped in quiet, and a man who finally stayed. Eventually she rolled over. He blinked awake, a small smile forming at the corners of his mouth. "Morning," he said, voice thick with sleep. "Hi." They stared at each other. Neither rushed to fill the silence, because it wasn't uncomfortable anymore. It was earned. He reached up and tucked a curl behind her ear. "You didn't run," he said softly. She smiled. "Neither did you." His thumb traced the curve of her cheek. "You okay?" "I am," she whispered. "More than I've been in a long time." He pulled her closer. She rested her head against his chest, listening to the heartbeat that had once broken her, now steady, strong, hers again. Later, they moved together through the morning like a quiet symphony. Noelle made breakfast while Damon scooped the girls from their cribs. He kissed each one good morning before changing diapers and humming softly as he worked. Noelle watched him from the kitchen doorway, spatula in one hand, heart in her throat. She'd imagined this before, more times than she could count. But reality was better, because now it wasn't a fantasy built on hope. It was a life built on choice, on showing up, on staying. They ate together, scrambled eggs, tiny bites of fruit, baby cereal on their shirts. The girls were giggling. Noelle was laughing. Damon kept brushing crumbs from her shoulder like it mattered. And it did, because it was ordinary. And that made it sacred. After breakfast, Damon offered to take the girls out for a stroller walk. "Just for an hour," he said, already buckling in Neva. "You need a break. You sure?" He grinned. "Try me." She nodded, kissed each baby, and stood by the door as he stepped out. When it shut behind him, the apartment fell into peaceful silence. She stood still. No crying. No dishes. No needs. Just her. She made tea, sat by the window, pulled out her journal. It had been months since she'd written anything other than grocery lists and doctor appointments. Now, the words flowed easily. He stayed, and I let him. Maybe this is what healing looks like. When Damon returned, cheeks flushed and the girls dozing in their seats, he looked at her like he'd missed her. Even after an hour, and she felt it deep in her chest. Not lust, not longing, just love, real and quiet, not spoken aloud, but undeniable. That night, they didn't rush to bed. They curled up on the couch, the girls asleep, the room dim with only one lamp glowing. She rested her head on his chest. He ran his fingers along her arm. Neither said "I love you," not yet. But everything about the way he kissed her forehead, the way she sighed into his shoulder, the way their hands found each other without effort. It said it louder than words ever could, and when she fell asleep on his chest, warm and steady and full, he whispered it anyway. Just once, just for her. "I love you. My amazing family, if this story moves you, please take a moment to hit the K button. Give it a thumbs up. It tells you appreciate my efforts. Also subscribe if you're tuning in for the first time. And now, let us dive back in." The next morning, the scent of strong coffee pulled Noelle from sleep. She stretched, muscles loose from the warmth of the night before, and padded barefoot into the kitchen. Damon stood at the stove, shirtless, hair still damp from the shower. One baby strapped to his chest in a carrier, another bouncing in a nearby seat. The third balanced on his hip. He flipped a pancake with one hand and adjusted Neva's pacifier with the other. "Morning, gorgeous," he said without turning. "I made the batter with oat flour this time." Noelle blinked. "Who are you? And what have you done with Damon Ashford?" He glanced over his shoulder, smirking. "I'm evolving." She stepped closer and kissed his cheek. "You're glowing," he murmured. "I'm shocked I slept 8 hours." He handed her a mug of coffee, just how she liked it. "You earned it." Over breakfast, the girls babbled and made a mess. Damon let Star smear yogurt on his face. Noelle laughed so hard she had to wipe her eyes. This was real, not perfect, not neat, but hers. After the girls went down for a nap, Damon opened his laptop at the dining table. "What are you working on?" she asked, joining him. He looked up. "The Tokyo trip. I canceled it." She blinked. "That's a $1 billion deal." He shrugged. "They can wait." "I can't." She sat beside him, confused but curious. Then he turned the screen toward her. On it, a draft for a guardianship petition. And beneath that, preliminary paperwork for a will. Her heart skipped. "You're naming them?" He nodded. "All 3. Officially. I want to make sure they're protected. No matter what." She swallowed hard. "And you," he added softly. "If you'll let me." She stared at him, not because she doubted his sincerity, but because no man had ever put her first like this. Not without strings, not without control. Just, "Love, you're serious," she whispered. He met her gaze, steady. "I want to be their father in every way, Not just by biology, by choice. Her eyes welled. He reached for her hand. You don't have to decide right now. But I needed you to see it, to know I'm not playing house. I'm building one. She didn't speak for a long time. Then, they already call you Dada. He smiled. Best title I've ever had. That night, while the girls slept, Noelle pulled a folder from her drawer. She sat beside Damon on the couch and handed it to him. Inside, the girls' birth certificates. Blank father lines. He looked up. I wasn't ready, she said. But now, I think we both are. His throat moved, emotion too thick to hide. He leaned over and kissed her, gentle, slow, grateful. I'll make you proud, he murmured. You already do. 3 days later, Damon stood in front of a modest courthouse with Noelle at his side and the triplets bundled up in matching white sweaters. It was overcast, a quiet kind of gray day that made everything feel still. Inside his chest, though, a storm of emotion churned, not fear, but weight. Responsibility, hope, love without condition. Noelle looked up at him as they stepped toward the entrance. You don't have to prove anything, Damon. Not to me. He stopped walking, gently turned to face her. I'm not doing this to prove anything. I'm doing it because it's right. She nodded, but he saw the shimmer in her eyes. So he leaned down and kissed her forehead. Then they walked in together, a family not yet signed on paper but already sealed in heart. The judge's chambers were quiet and warmly lit. The petition had already been reviewed. The DNA confirmation was notarized. The paperwork was flawless, expedited through the help of a quiet but fierce attorney Damon had worked with for years. Still, formality mattered. So, you're requesting full legal acknowledgement of paternity for all 3 children? The judge asked, glancing over his glasses. Damon's voice was steady. Yes, Your Honor. And you are waiving any test or dispute, Miss Baptiste? Noelle lifted her chin. They are his. I've never doubted that. And the names? Damon looked at Noelle. She nodded. He turned back to the judge. Lonnie Ashford, Neva Ashford, Star Ashford. The judge's pen scratched softly over the paper. Noelle's fingers slipped into Damon's. He held on tight. The decree was signed. Just like that, 3 little lives now carried his name. But to Damon, it wasn't about ownership. It was about belonging. These girls had always been his. Now the world would know it too. Outside the courthouse, Noelle stopped on the sidewalk. You didn't have to do all this. I wanted to. They would have loved you anyway. He smiled. Now they get to keep me. She laughed, soft and low, then leaned into him, wrapping one arm around his waist, the other resting gently over the triplet's stroller. You know, she said, there was a time I thought I'd never forgive you. I still don't forgive myself, he murmured. She looked up. You should. He blinked. Because you came back, and you stayed. That night, back in their apartment, he carried each girl to bed one at a time. Noelle watched from the hallway as he whispered something to each daughter before laying them gently down, brushing a kiss to each forehead. She didn't ask what he said. Some things belong just between a father and his daughters. Later, when the lights were out and the room quiet, she curled up in bed beside him. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. She rested her head on his chest. And as his fingers trailed up and down her spine, she realized something. This was no longer a second chance. It was the beginning they were brave enough to write together. It was a gala night, a Helix Holdings annual fundraiser draped in gold linen and champagne flutes. Waiters floated past with silver trays. A jazz trio played something smooth and expensive. Beneath the crystal light, Atlanta's elite swirled in glittering gowns and tailored suits. Noelle stood near the edge of the ballroom, her hand tucked into Damon's arm. She wore emerald green, sleek, elegant, sleeveless, her curls pinned up, diamond studs glittering against her warm skin. Damon hadn't taken his eyes off her all night. You're stunning, he murmured near her ear. She smiled. Try to keep your jaw closed, Mr. Ashford. But before he could pull her close, a voice, smooth, feminine, sharp as glass, sliced through the music. Well, isn't this cozy? Damon's shoulders tensed. Noelle turned and froze. Standing just feet away in a champagne-colored gown, eyes cool and mouth smirking, was Cressida Vale. Noelle knew the name. Cressida had once worked as a senior executive at one of Helix's subsidiary firms. Intelligent, poised, deadly with a press release. And, briefly, Damon's rebound. It wasn't jealousy Noelle felt. It was clarity, because Cressida had never wanted love, only power. And Damon, back then, had been too broken to see it. "Damon," Cressida purred. "You didn't please reply." "I didn't need to," he said flatly. Her gaze flicked to Noelle. "And you brought a +1. How quaint." Damon's jaw tightened. "Watch it." "Oh, come now. We're all adults here." Noelle's spine straightened. "And some of us have moved on." Cressida's eyes narrowed. "I just assumed. Well, considering you haven't proposed yet." Damon stepped forward, voice like steel. "Enough." A few nearby heads turned. Cressida's smile faltered, just for a moment, then returned, thinner. "Well, enjoy your evening, while it lasts." She turned and melted back into the crowd. Noelle and Damon stood silent for a moment, then she pulled away. "I need air." Outside, the night was cool, the city quiet beyond the marble steps. Noelle wrapped her arms around herself and took a long breath. Damon followed. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "For her, or for not telling me she'd be here." He ran a hand through his hair. "Both. I thought she was in London." "She was, until she bought a PR stake here last month. I found out yesterday. And you didn't mention it? I didn't think she'd show up." She looked away. He stepped closer. "She doesn't matter. Then why does she still think she can get to you?" His silence answered everything. Noelle swallowed. "I don't want to be the girl who flinches every time someone from your world walks in wearing a $10,000 dress and a smirk. You're not. You sure?" He stepped in front of her, lifted her chin gently. "She's noise," he said. "You're music." Her eyes searched his. "I love you, Noelle. Not her. Not what she represents. You." She looked away, unsure. He let his hand drop. "I'll take you home," he offered. But she shook her head. "No, I'll call a car." Damon didn't argue, didn't chase. He just stood on the steps and watched her walk away. And the air between them, the one that had once been so warm, now held something colder. Not distrust, but caution. It was almost midnight when Noelle stepped into the apartment. The lights were low. The hum of the refrigerator was the only sound. She kicked off her heels slowly, carefully, as if the noise might break something. In the nursery, she checked on the girls. Lonnie was snoring softly. Neva had one tiny hand wrapped around the edge of her blanket. Star's pacifier had fallen to the floor, but she was content, thumb in her mouth. They were peaceful, untouched by doubt. Noelle wished she felt the same. She made tea, but didn't drink it. Stood by the window, the city stretching endlessly beyond the glass. She wasn't angry. She was unsettled. She'd finally let Damon in, let herself hope. And now, just a glance from the past had opened a door she thought was locked. Not because of Cressida, but because of what Cressida represented, the life Damon once had. The world where women like Noelle didn't belong unless they wore masks and walked tightropes. Noelle had walked enough tightropes. Her phone buzzed. A message. From Damon. "I'm outside. I won't come in unless you say so." She stared at the screen, then slowly typed, "Doors open." He stepped in quietly, a bouquet of pink ranunculus in hand. She arched a brow. "I Googled what flowers mean. I messed up, but please don't shut me out." She cracked a tiny smile. "Did it say ranunculus?" "No," he said, stepping closer. "It said tulips." But they were out of tulips. She took the bouquet, held it, breathed it in, then looked at him, hard. "I need to ask you something. Anything. If we'd never had the girls, if I never told you, would you still have come back?" His breath caught. He didn't answer right away. Then, "I don't know." She nodded, expected that. "But I would have thought about you every single day," he added. "I already was. Even before I found out where you were." Her voice was quiet. "That's not the same as showing up." "I know." He stepped closer. "I know I wasn't brave then, but I am now. You say that. I'll keep saying it, and I'll keep proving it." She set the flowers down, walked past him. He didn't stop her, but she didn't go far. She stopped in the hallway, fingers brushing the framed photo on the wall, one he took of her and the girls last weekend in the park, then turned. "Do you want to marry me, Damon?" His eyes widened. "I mean it," she said. "Do you? Or are we just pretending?" He crossed the distance in 2 strides, took her hands. I was waiting for the right time. She raised a brow. There is no right time, is there? No, he said. Only the right person. And am I that person? He pulled her in, wrapped her in his arms. You've always been. She leaned into his chest, listened to the beat of his heart. Steady, real, no more questions. Not tonight. Just this, the space between fear and faith, between doubt and certainty, and the man who stayed when he didn't have to. The sun broke through the blinds in slender beams, casting lines across the kitchen tiles. Noelle stood barefoot at the counter, wearing one of Damon's white shirts, sleeves rolled up. Her hair was loosely pinned, steam rising from the coffee mug between her hands. The triplets were still sleeping. For once, the world was quiet. Damon entered quietly, pulling on a t-shirt, his eyes landing on her like they always did, like he was still trying to believe she was real. You're up early, he said, voice thick with sleep. She glanced over her shoulder. So are you. He walked up behind her, slid his arms around her waist, and rested his chin on her shoulder. I had a dream, he murmured. Oh yeah? We were in a tiny kitchen, 3 babies laughing, coffee brewing, and you. He kissed her neck, right here, looking like forever. She smiled. That's not a dream. That's today. He turned her gently to face him. Noelle? She looked up, heartbeat rising. I don't have a ring, he said, because I didn't plan this. I didn't want it to feel staged. I didn't want it to be about wealth or sparkle. Then what did you want it to be about? He held her hand and lowered to one knee. The truth. Her breath hitched. I've spent so much of my life chasing empires, building walls. I forgot what it meant to be held, to be seen, to be forgiven. You reminded me. She blinked back sudden tears. You don't have to answer right now, he said. But I need you to know, I'm not going anywhere, not today, not ever. Her voice was barely a whisper. You don't need a ring to propose to me in this kitchen. No? She shook her head. Then marry me, he said. Let's raise our girls together. Let's build something that doesn't need towers or stock shares to matter. Yes, she whispered. Then louder, yes. They kissed, slow and full of light, and when the triplets woke minutes later, babbling from their cribs, Noelle and Damon rushed in, both laughing, still breathless, still holding hands. They lifted all 3 girls and danced in the nursery to music only they could hear. Lonnie clapped, Neva drooled. Star giggled like a melody. This wasn't a fantasy. It was breakfast in pajamas, kisses with morning breath, and a proposal that tasted like coffee and new beginnings. Later, when Noelle tucked the girls in for their afternoon nap, she caught Damon staring out the window. She wrapped her arms around him from behind. What are you thinking? I never imagined my life could be this quiet. She pressed her cheek to his back. Good quiet, or bad? Good. The kind that makes noise feel irrelevant. He turned and cupped her face. I'm going to be a good husband. You're already a great father. I want both. Then you have it, she whispered, and kissed him. Not because he asked, but because he earned it. 6 months later, the garden bloomed like it had been waiting for this day. Magnolias stretched wide, their creamy petals catching the light. White chairs were lined in gentle curves beneath a canopy of trees. A small string quartet played softly in the distance. The air carried the scent of roses and something sweeter, maybe joy. There was no press, no media, no branded napkins or monogram decor, only them. Noelle walked down a short aisle, her dress simple and soft, hugging her frame like a second skin. A trail of lace followed behind her like a memory. The triplets went first, tiny flower girls in cream dresses, their curls bouncing with each determined step. Star threw petals like confetti. Neva tried to eat hers. Lonnie tripped halfway through and started giggling. Everyone laughed. Noelle's mother clutched a handkerchief. Damon's best friend clapped him on the shoulder as he stood waiting under a white arch wrapped in ivy. When Noelle reached him, Damon didn't speak. He just looked at her like the world had finally tilted into place. You're beautiful, he said. You look like a man in love, she teased. I am. They joined hands. The officiant's voice faded into the background, because in that moment neither of them heard anything but the breath between them. When the vows came, Damon went off script. I've been wealthy, I've been alone, I've been powerful and empty, but nothing feels as rich as waking up next to you, and nothing feels as whole as being their father. Noelle's eyes shimmered. "I've lived in mansions and I've lived on welfare," she said, "but I've never felt more at home than in your arms. You don't just give love, Damon. You are love when you let yourself be." The wind stirred the leaves above them. The officiant gave the signal. "You may now." Damon didn't wait. He kissed her like it was his first and his last all at once. Their guests stood, cheered, clapped. Lonnie clapped too, mimicking the sound. Neva stared, confused. Star let out a squeal that turned into a giggle. It wasn't a picture-perfect wedding. It was real. Warm, alive. After the ceremony, Noelle and Damon danced under the trees, barefoot on the grass. The girls sat on a picnic blanket with Noelle's aunt, eating tiny sandwiches and fruit slices. "You know what I realized?" Noelle said as she twirled. "What?" "We didn't even hire a photographer." He smiled. "We didn't need one." "Why not?" "Because I'm never forgetting this." Later that evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Noelle and Damon sat on a garden bench. No speeches, no spotlight, just them, and the sound of their daughters chasing butterflies nearby. Damon took her hand and kissed her ring finger. "Forever starts easy when it starts with you." She leaned on his shoulder. "And ends with you." 6 months later, morning bloomed slow and gold over the city. Their new home, a quiet brownstone tucked along a shaded Atlanta street, was filled with the everyday sound of a life well lived. Lonnie was banging a spoon against her high chair. Neva had yogurt in her hair. Star had managed to undo her onesie and was halfway out of it. Noelle stood barefoot in the kitchen, holding a cup of tea, watching the chaos with a smile tugging at her lips. Damon walked in wearing pajama pants and a wrinkled shirt, hair still messy from sleep. He picked up Star, buttoned her back in, kissed the top of her head. "You three planning a mutiny today?" he asked, mock serious. Star shrieked in delight. "They're trying to train you," Noelle said. He kissed her cheek. "It's working." They moved like a team, wiping faces, fixing bottles, passing toys. Noelle handed Damon a sticky note. "What's this?" "Your to-do list." He groaned. She raised a brow. "You're not CEO of the house in Helix, if you can't handle breakfast duty and signing daycare forms." He gave her a mock salute. "Yes, ma'am." She walked past him, brushing her hand across his back. He caught her wrist and tugged her into a soft kiss. "I love this," he whispered. "Sticky notes and yogurt war zones?" "No," he said. "This. Us." That afternoon, the triplets were napping. Noelle curled into Damon's lap on the living room couch, her head on his chest. The TV was playing something neither of them was watching. "You ever miss the noise?" she asked. He looked down. "Which kind?" "The parties, the press, the flights." He kissed the top of her head. "I missed this more." She smiled into his shirt. "I don't need chandeliers or private jets," she said. "Just you and them. You've got all of it," he said. "Forever." Outside, rain started to tap against the windows, light, steady. Damon reached for a blanket and pulled it over them. She was already asleep on his chest. His arms tightened around her. He looked at the framed picture across the room, their wedding day, the girls throwing petals, Noelle laughing mid-spin. He didn't need more. He had his empire. Right here, in soft skin, sleepy giggles, and the quiet beat of a heart resting against his. Later that night, when the girls stirred, Damon was the one who padded into the nursery. Noelle watched him from the doorway. He changed diapers, hummed a lullaby, rocked Neva back to sleep. He caught her gaze and smiled. "Guess I'm getting good at this," he whispered. "You're more than good," she said. "You're theirs." He walked over and wrapped an arm around her waist. "And I'm yours." They stood there in the dim nursery light, watching the girls sleep. Noelle rested her head on Damon's shoulder. She spoke softly. "If someone told me 2 years ago this would be my life, you'd have laughed?" "No," she said. "I'd have cried, because I wanted it so badly, and I didn't think I deserved it." He turned her gently. "You deserved all of it." She kissed him, slow and full of peace. And just like that, what was once broken found its way back to whole, not through riches or grand gestures, but through quiet forgiveness, second chances, and the kind of love that refuses to give up. If this story touched your heart even just a little, do us a favor. Hit the like button so YouTube knows you want more. Comment below, what was your favorite moment from Noelle and Damon's journey? We read every word. Share this video with someone who still believes in love that fights back. And if you're new here, subscribe to Love and Twilights, where every story reminds us that no matter how far we fall, love can still find a way to rise. Until next time, keep believing, keep feeling, and remember, every love story deserves a second chapter. This is Dr. Phillips.